My name is Pamela Seard. I'm 34. And last Saturday, a security guard told me I wasn't good enough to use the front door of my own hotel, redirected to the service entrance for delivery trucks and kitchen staff at the insistence of my sister, Natalie, while my mother, standing just 5 meters away, watched with a smile of pure satisfaction, completely unaware that 6 months ago I had quietly purchased the Sterling Hotel, the very property where the $85,000 engagement party they'd meticulously planned was unfolding, and definitely unaware that the hotel manager would soon approach me, addressing me respectfully as the owner, asking if everything was to my satisfaction. A moment that would encapsulate years of being overlooked, dismissed, and invisible. A role that had been mine since childhood, ever since my birth. Arriving 2 years after Natalie and apparently too late to matter, when every family celebration, every phone call, every holiday centered around my sister's achievements, while mine went unnoticed, unacknowledged, and unremarked upon. From Thanksgiving 2 years ago, when my mother introduced me to her book club as still figuring things out, despite owning 2 hotels, to my 25th birthday, when she laughed at my request for a small loan to buy a 10-room bed and breakfast, calling it a fantasy, while she had given Natalie $40,000 for a down payment, affirming she knew how to build a life, while I drifted. A narrative I had internalized until I quietly took control, investing, borrowing at high interest, navigating a divorce that my mother dismissed as poor judgment, and choosing to stop seeking approval from people who would never see me. While Natalie's engagement announcement came through Facebook with no call or text, only a public post flaunting her 14-carat ring and the caption, "She said yes, celebration details coming soon." And even when my mother finally called 3 days later, it was to instruct and warn rather than invite, a cruel echo of years of neglect. And when I read the email from Marcus, the general manager, highlighting my name on a list to be routed to the service entrance, I realized the depth of their intention, that my sister had classified me alongside people her fiancé avoided, prompting me to respond to Marcus with instructions to let everything proceed exactly as planned, knowing this was my moment. And when I arrived that Saturday, carefully dressed in simple black pearls, elegant but understated, the security guard tried to enforce Natalie's blacklist, my mother watching without intervention, a genuine smile of approval crossing her face as if this public humiliation was her triumph, while I stood my ground, observing every reaction, from the bellhop Thomas freezing mid-step to the kitchen staff whispering and pausing, until I entered the service corridor, the stark fluorescent lights contrasting with the glamour beyond, and the staff, fully aware of my presence and status as owner, began to treat me with subtle respect, a quiet acknowledgement of the power dynamic they understood, but my family did not, until I slipped into the ballroom through the back corridor, unseen, invisible, yet entirely present, observing the $85,000 extravaganza, the Harrington family, my mother, and my sister basking in their version of perfection, and choosing to let them continue unaware of my control, while I coordinated with Daniel, my friend and attorney, positioned strategically to witness the unfolding revelation, holding my champagne glass, patient, calculating, while Natalie took the stage to deliver her speech of family, love, and gratitude, inadvertently referencing my divorce and my absence, a subtle reminder to everyone of my invisibility, until the crucial moment arrived when Marcus approached my mother and whispered my authority, prompting my declaration to the staff that I was a guest, but also the owner. And as the word owner passed from his lips, the room froze. Conversations halted, champagne poised mid-air, strings of Vivaldi playing obliviously in the background, and my mother and sister's carefully curated facades crumbled before the crowd, shock and disbelief rippling through the guests. And when Daniel produced the acquisition paperwork, the deed, the full proof of my ownership, the collective realization that the invisible daughter had quietly become the one in control sank in,
Eleanor Harrington assessing the situation with sharp eyes, recognizing competence and authority where my family had refused to see it for decades. Natalie and my mother struggling to reconcile their assumptions with reality, whispers spreading, phones emerging, their plan to humiliate me backfiring spectacularly as I remained composed, calm, in control. And when the confrontation ended, my family left stunned, uncertain, powerless, and my sense of self fully intact. I realized that the victory was not about revenge, but about refusing to shrink for people who never saw me, choosing instead to exist authentically, unapologetically, and visible on my own terms. Walking through the main entrance I had been denied, acknowledged silently by staff, breathing in the cool night air, feeling freedom for years. And even as the messages, missed calls, and texts came flooding from my mother and sister, I held firm, not responding to their desperation or manufactured guilt, knowing that their need to see me finally forced them to confront reality. And over time, as my family adapted, hesitant and awkwardly, as my mother inquired about my business for the first time with genuine curiosity, and Natalie's prenuptial terms were revised under scrutiny, influenced by Eleanor Harrington's meticulous standards, I realized the transformation had been internal as much as external, that owning the sterling and asserting my presence had shifted the dynamics irrevocably, not to punish, not to humiliate, but to end the decades-long narrative of invisibility, to reclaim my life and accomplishments without apology, teaching myself, and perhaps my family, the most important lesson of all, that self-worth is defined by oneself, not by the recognition of others, and that truth, patience, and composure can wield far more power than anger or revenge. So that when spring came and I signed papers on my 5th property, the historic inn upstate, full circle from my first bed and breakfast, and observed the world continuing without me at Natalie's wedding, I felt neither bitterness nor triumph, only peace, knowing I had finally stopped performing, stopped shrinking, stopped waiting for acknowledgement that might never come. And in that, I was whole, seen, and unshakably Pamela Seard, the daughter they thought invisible, but who had quietly built a life entirely on her own terms.